Hey guys, it's Tiny Tom Logan back with another video for you. Now, it's time, finally, for the NZXT Havik 140 CPU cooler, which we're going to put head to head with the Noctua NH-D14. Now, obviously I'm going to do the unboxing and show you everything in this box, but I'm pretty sure most of you must have seen the NH-D14 by now, because it has been around for quite some time. So I'm not going to bore you by doing a side-by-side comparison with like all the aesthetics and everything, but obviously we will do side-by-side testing on exactly the same kit at the same time, all that kind of stuff. But anyway, the Havik, right, it says that it's got 6mm heat pipes, easy installation. They say it's 25 decibels, and it's 100% soldered. Now, something I was a little perplexed with, on the side of the box here, I'm hoping the camera's going to be able to focus, but it's got no mention of 1366 CPUs up here, but if you go on their website, it does. Also, on the documentation in the box, it does mention 1366, and the bracket, the backplate, does support 1366 as well. So I'm going to test it on 1366. Other than that, we'll flip around the back. It's got a two-stage mount, which is great. That's what we like to see. Makes it much easier to fit. You can see the heat pipes and stuff here. They're saying it's newly patented fins, exceptionally, basically just for reduced noise. It's actually a bit Chinglish, that. But yeah, 240mm fans. I suppose we should really just get the box open quickly. I'll put this down. This is the paperwork. Now, I'm just going to show you quickly just the paperwork. I'm not going to actually show you that, but what I'm going to show you is the fact, where is it? There we go. We look there. It does mention 1366, and the bracket definitely supports 1366 as well. There are two fans with it. It comes with both of them. And I know a lot of you do like the look of these fans. I have seen of late that Sigmatech have started using these exact same fans as well, so we do know that they're a rebrand. They're not an NZXT specific product. They've got some nice, I say braiding, but it's like a waxy kind of cotton stuff, and it's very similar, if not exactly the same, to the braiding that Noctua use on their fans. In fact, I'm just going to stick my hand in the case and make sure. Yeah, it's exactly the same. But obviously we've got nice white blades, black frame. Can't really argue too much about that because it works. As I said, we do have a second one, which is all nice. Now, just going to show you inside the accessories box, just briefly. I'm trying to do this really quick. But the bracketry and everything that's in there, you've got rubber mounts for the fans that you clip the fans on with. The two-stage bracket in there. There is some thermal paste, although it is just a generic low-end paste. I would still personally, if you were to buy this kit, I would still advise you to buy yourself some decent paste. Not Arctic Silver 5, that stuff is ancient. I can't believe people are still using that. And it also comes with a single 3-pin to dual 3-pin adapter. It doesn't look like it's a fan speed reducer. It just looks like the type of thing that you can plug in so that you can have both the fans running off of one fan header. So a few nice bits and bobs in there. But really now it will be time to actually get the heatsink out. Now, the reason why this is looking quite difficult for me to do is this is the first time I've properly had a good look at it as well. I've literally, since this arrived, I've not got it out the box. I have to say, straight away, it's making me think Thermalright Ultra. It's not, but just the design of it does kind of feel that way. I'm going to pull the plastic plate off the bottom so that we can have a look at the machining on the bottom of it. Stick that over there. Right, so there's the machine, and it's not mirror finish, but very few are nowadays, to be perfectly honest with you. Still a very good quality finish. As you can see, we've got the 6 heat pipes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. which are quite nicely spaced out when you think about it. It's actually the size, this kind of size of the heatsink. There's not a massive amount of it, to be perfectly honest with you. It's not a large heatsink. I was, in all honesty, expecting this to be a fair amount thicker, but obviously it's not. It's got the you can see on the edge of the blade there, edge of the fin, sorry, that it's kind of got that machine kind of surface, which is what I think they were talking about to stop noise. It does appear to have that kind of surface on every single one of the blades. I was actually just looking there to have a to see whether it was on all the blades, and it does appear to be. But I think it's time now for us to get this in the rig. As I said, it's a two-stage bracket, so pretty much all you're going to have to do is bolt one section through the board, fix it all down, and then the actual heatsink gets then with a secondary clamp comes down and bolts onto the initial clamp. So fitting isn't going to be difficult. I will talk you through that in the conclusion to let you know exactly what it's like, but I'm not going to sort of show you a guide. I don't think we need to do it really. But now what we're going to do is I'm going to get this fitted. I'll give you a quick look at it once it's in the rig, and then we'll break on to some testing. Right then, guys and gals, that is the Havik installed, and one of the things I'm pretty impressed with is it doesn't actually appear to stand up too far out from the board. I was expecting it to be a lot bigger than this. Another thing to consider is if you look down the side there, it's not encroaching on any of the RAM whatsoever. Now the Noctua pretty much covers, with the fan attached, it covers two sticks. Without the fan attached, the first stick is completely covered by the heatsink, so it's a fair bit smaller. With the mount, I was really quite happy with the mount actually. It was a bit of a Jekyll and Hyde, because the metal parts of it did feel, you know, a little bit cheap, but with everything like the screws that push through the back plate, it was all kind of a quite nice tight fit, whereas once you pushed them through and got them through, they didn't rattle around or anything like that, they didn't fall out, and even the plastic spacers that you push down over the screws on this side were a nice tight press fit as well, to the point where you could get them on there and you didn't have to worry about them falling out or anything, so I was quite impressed with that. Obviously the clips for the fans are rubber. One thing I would say is it can be a bit difficult to get these on, especially down the back. One thing I would say is if you've got quite a small case, it may take you a bit of time to get them on there, sort of like having to jiggle your hands around and stuff like that. But obviously where they are rubber, they're not going to rattle or anything like that. You're not going to have any problems with the clips shorting out on your graphics card or anything like that, because I have seen and heard of metal clips coming off when they're in the case and shorting out the back of graphics cards. So the fact that these are rubber is definitely a plus point there. There's no rubber on the edge of the fans, which might have been nice for an extra bit of damping, but obviously we've not started it yet, but I very much doubt we're going to get any kind of rattling noise anyway. I have done the heatsink up as tight as it will go, and it's still, you can kind of move it a little bit, so it's not completely solid. Paste wise, because it came with a generic paste, on all the tests that we're going to do, I'm using the Noctua NH-D14 paste. So that takes, you know, I mean, any problems with using the generic paste that come with this and then the Noctua paste that come with the other one. So it's going to kind of favour this a little bit more. But like I said, I was expecting these fans to stick out a fair bit more than this. I'm pretty impressed with that. I'm going to take some measurements and we'll talk about that in the conclusion to see what, you know, kind of size is there, so we'll be able to work out what cases and everything it will fit in. The fan cables themselves were quite short in the fact that I've got them at the back, and I normally poke mine down through the back. Throughout the test that we're going to be running all the fans on 12 volts anyway. I think the fan cables though should have been a little bit longer, unless you're going to stick them on your motherboard. then it wouldn't be too much of a problem. I don't ever do that. I always power my fans off of a Molex down the back of the board, and if it's a bit noisy, then I just use fan speed reducers down the back to keep it tidy. I don't like using the onboard stuff because you can never get a true 12 volts from them anyway. So yeah, installation, very impressed with that. Aesthetics, I'm pretty impressed with that as well. I'm just going to move the tripod a bit. Hopefully I'll be able to do this without making too much of an issue of it. There we go. But it does look pretty good there. I am quite impressed. If I move the case a little bit, you can see that's a 140mm fan at the back, and there's still masses of room. So yeah, it does do does tick all the boxes. One thing I will say, with this board at least, if you have a look, you could be using Tool Vengeance if you wanted, or like the Kingston, like the Super Tool Kingston that they do. Now, not necessarily that you need massive heat sinks on your RAM, but this could be a cooler for those of you with those ginormous RAM heat sinks for whatever reason. But really now what I need to do is get tidied up, because the workbench and everything's a bit of a bomb site now. And then we'll start doing some testing. Just to confuse you, I'm going to start with the Noctua testing because I've already filmed that. Yeah, because obviously I've got to do everything in the stages. But we'll do the Noctua first, and then we'll do the NZXT afterwards, and I'll cut it all up so it works. So you'll get a base score with the Noctua, and then we'll go on to see how good the NZXT was afterwards. So we'll be doing 4 GHz at 1.25 volts, 4.2 GHz at 1.35 volts, and then 4.4 GHz at 1.45 volts, and we'll see how we get on. So right, yes, it's now time to get down to the nitty gritty and down to the bit that we all actually want to see, which is the temperature results. Right then peeps, this isn't going to be the most scientific way of doing things, but it's probably the best way that I can do things with the equipment that I've got available. But yeah, just let me let you listen to this fan. If you have a look at the back fan, I'm just going to do the good old school, shove my finger in and stop it. So that's that stopped, and I'm going to put the microphone up to it. Now as you can hear, that's got quite a buzz to it. The back one is definitely worse than the front one, but the front one's not quiet either. So as far as noise is concerned, I would definitely say that the NZXT is louder than the NH-D14. But now we need to get on with the testing. So I'm going to get straight on now. Next thing you see is going to be the Noctua NH-D14 at 4 GHz. Right then guys, just so that you know, the ambient temperature that you need to be looking at is the one at the bottom, 19.6. That's the internal temperature. The other temperature is actually my loft. Long story, but anyway. What we'll do is we'll pan around here. Basically, what we need to do is have a look there. You can see that we're on 4 GHz, 200 times 20, 1.25 volts. All the usual stuff, as you would expect. Prime has been running for quite some time, just over 30 minutes now, as you can see, screaming down there. If I just zoom in here, we can see the temperatures, and that's the current value, the minimum value, and then the maximum value. When I took my results, they were 62, 60, 59, 58. That gave us an average temperature across all 4 cores of 59.75 degrees. Take off the 19.5 degrees ambient temperature that there was at the time of taking the results, and that gives us a delta temperature of 40.25 degrees. So that's with the NH-D14, with both the fans at 12 volts, and run at our normal 200 times 20 on the 950. So now it's time to move on a bit. Right then guys, on to the Havik testing at 4 GHz. You can see the ambient temperature there at the bottom. It says in on the left hand side is 21.8 degrees. When I took my results, it was 21.8 as well, which is pretty good. Anyway, right, zoom out a bit. Oh, Krispy Kreme, look at that. Anyway, you see Prime there, it's been running for quite some time. It's actually been running for just over 30 minutes. We zoom right in, we can see, as always, we've got 4 gigahertz, 1.25 volts. And if we come down, if you have a look at those temperatures there, sorry it's at an angle, but it's because of the way the camera and the monitor and everything is. But anyway, left hand side is the value at the moment, middle one is the lowest, and the right hand side is the maximum. So we've got 68, 64, 64, 62. That gives us an average temperature of 64.5 degrees. If you then take away the 21.8 degrees ambient temperature, that gives us a delta temperature of 42.7 degrees. So, comparing that to the Noctua, that is an increase of 2.45 degrees above the results that we got on the D14. I'm not going to go into it too much at the moment. I'm going to save it all towards the end. But it's now time for us to move on and have a look at the performance results of the D14 again, but this time at 4.2 gigahertz. Right then guys, back to the Noctua. Obviously we're at 4.2 gigahertz again. Ambient temperature is 20.7, as you can see at the bottom there. Let me just turn the, there we go, studio light on a bit. Anyway, if we come round, you can see there, although on an angle, you can see we're at 4.2 gigahertz, 1.35 volts, 200 times 21. Just zoom out a bit. Right, you can see that Prime has been running there for a little over 30 minutes, as always. And then if we zoom in here, like I said, I apologise that we're on an angle, but it's just because I'm having to move between everything. Anyway, left hand side is current temperature, middle is lowest, right hand side is the maximum. So the maximum temperatures that we had across the course were 76, 72, 71, 71, giving us an average temperature of 72.5. If you take away the 20.7 degrees ambient temperature, that gives you a 51.8 degrees delta temperature. And don't forget, we are starting to really push the volts now. We're into the 1.3 volt range, so things are getting pretty high. Right then guys, you can see the ambient temperature there is 22.4 degrees. When I took my results, it was 22.3 degrees. Anyway, if we move across, you can see there that we are testing. I'll hold the tripod. See there, we're testing again at 4.2 gigahertz. 200 times 21, 1.35 volts. Right, there's your validation that Prime has been running. It's been running now in total for just over 30 minutes, and if we move across here, there's the results, the temperature results. Now, when I got took my results, I had 78, 75, 74, 73, giving us an average temperature of 75 degrees dead across all 4 of the cores. If you take away the 22.3 degrees ambient, that gives us a a delta temperature of 52.7 degrees. That gives us an increase of 0.9 degrees above the NH-D14, which at 4.2 gigahertz is a pretty good score. But now, I must say, it's now time for the Big Daddy test. We now need to move on to 4.4 gigahertz at a massive 1.45 volts. Right then guys, this is the big test. You can see there at the bottom the ambient temperature is 22.1 degrees. If we move over there, I'll zoom you in a little bit more. Sorry for being on an angle. You can see we're at 4.4 gigahertz, 1.45 volts. It's gone up a little bit more because of the load line calibration that's been activated. You can see that we have Prime has been running for quite some time. Again, Prime has been running for just over half an hour. When I took my results, I had maximum temperatures of 94, 94, 89, 88. One thing I will say is we need to remember that this is the NH-D14 I tested originally. So it's got dust on it. Do you know what I mean? Literally, it's my original one that I've been using for forever. It gives us an average temperature of 91.25 degrees. Take away the 22.1 degrees ambient temperature, and that gives us a delta temperature of 69.15. Now, please remember, this is the 4.4 gigahertz test. This is the one that separates the men from the boys, because only the best coolers have ever passed this test. Anyway, it's time to see how the Havik does. Right then, peeps, back with the Havik at 4.4. You can see there that the ambient temperature is 22.8 degrees. If I move the tripod around a bit, you can see that we're at 4.4 gigahertz, 1.45 volts. It's up a little bit because of the load line calibration, but it's still exactly the same settings that we used and registering the same settings that, or registering the same voltage, I should say, that we had on the D14. You can see that prime has been running for quite some time there, well, just over 30 minutes as normal. Right, so there we go. If you have a look at the maximum temperatures on the right hand side, that's where we take our results from. We had 97, 94, 90, 89 when I took my results, and it's still the same there now actually, giving us 92.5 degrees average temperature. Slightly over spec, but we wanted to run these just to show you what was possible. Generally I normally end the tests if they all go above kind of 90 degrees, but anyway, right, so 22.8 degrees ambient, take that away, that gives us a 69.7 degrees delta temperature. That means that the Havik was 0.55 degrees above the Noctua NH-D14 at the same settings, delta wise. So all in all, it's done fairly well, but we really need to cut this off now, stop punishing the test system so much, and then move on to the conclusion. Right then guys, time for the conclusion. Just as from the get-go, the door's off just for the conclusion. We didn't do the testing like that obviously, and it's just so that you can see the Havik in there. I'm going to say the award and then I'm going to explain why, but one thing I will say is the D14 that we use in the testing is my original D14 sample from literally when it first came out, and it's also the D14 that I use in all of my reviews as well. So if you go back through at any time that you've seen the D14 being used, it is the same one. It's an absolute bomb-proof unit, and the mount is one of the reasons why I like it so much. But anyway, just to let you know about that. Right, Havik, I'm going to tell you the award, and then I'll explain why. And one thing I will say from the start as well is because there was a noticeable problem that I've had with NZXT recently, and I don't want anyone to think that I'm giving this award to try and get back in their good books or anything, because to be perfectly honest with you, I really don't care whether I'm in anyone's good books or not. But I'm going to give this a gold award, and to be perfectly fair about it, it actually thoroughly deserves it. And I do mean thoroughly deserves it, and I'm going to explain to you why. And one thing I will say is it deserves that gold award, even though now a lot of other reviewers out there have said that it beat the NH-D14. Well, not in my tests, but there really wasn't that much in it, and I mean there really wasn't much in it at all. The most there was, and it was at the coolest temperature, was 2.45 degrees, so 2.5 degrees at 4 gigahertz. This was warmer than the NH-D14, but as you moved up through the clock speeds and volts, it actually closed the gap. It was almost a degree warmer at 4.2, but down to half a degree warmer at 4.4. And the fact that it actually closed the gap, as it started, you know, we really were pushing those volts through. Now, technically, both these coolers, as far as our testing is concerned, went over 90 degrees. So technically they both failed the 4.4 gigahertz test this time round. But I left the test running just to be able to show you how close they were, because you had a 69.7 degrees for the Havik and then a 69.15 degrees for the NH-D14, and they were delta temperatures, so that was above ambient. But that is no small feat, because one thing I do need to kind of explain is that this unit is only about 5 millimeters wider than one tower on the D14. And obviously the D14's got both those towers, so it does really, really well. It also doesn't encroach on the RAM socket at all, even with the fans fitted, and you can push the fans right down. Because one thing I was worried was about the fans sitting up too far and basically affecting the side of cases. But where it doesn't get anywhere near the RAM or anything, they both sit down far enough for it to not be a problem. Pretty much any case with a 120mm exhaust, there are going to be some very few exceptions, but if your case has got a 120mm exhaust with a little bit extra on the outside of the fan, so the fan's not almost touching the door, but you've got 120 at the back with, you know, a little bit extra, you'll be able to get this in your case. And also where it doesn't have any problems with the RAM, or shouldn't have too many problems with most motherboards over the RAM, you'll also be able to run things like the massive Kingston RAM, the Corsair Vengeance, without any problems at all, to the point where this will actually help keep your RAM cool anyway, but you don't need those big RAM heatsinks. So we won't even go down that road because I'm fed up with talking about it. The mount on this, because it's one of the things I really like about a D14 is the mount. The mount on this almost goes, there's bits of it that are better than the D14 mount, believe it or not, and then there's other bits that aren't quite as good. But the better bits is the fact that when you push the screws through the back plate, you have to push them past quite a tight plastic so that it holds it into place. So you can push all the screws through and then you can tip it upside down and all over the place, and the screws won't fall out. Also, that helps when you're putting it through like the mounting points on the board for the CPU heatsink. The screws don't then start to fall out and fall all over the place like they do with so many other coolers, and it gets quite frustrating. Also, when you then put the spacers over the top as well, you've got like little black 5mm spacers that push over the top of the screws. They're also like a push fit stroke press fit as well. When they go on there, you could then turn that upside down as well, and those spacers won't fall off either. After that, it all goes on pretty much the same as the D14. I did think that there wasn't as much, you know, kind of pressure on the heatsink as I was expecting. But other than that, I really didn't have a problem with it. And yeah, like I said, the temperatures are good, the mount's good, the fans let it down a bit because they're not the quietest in the world. It is definitely louder than the D14. I showed you with it the microphone earlier on. They are on 12 volts, so if you were going to kind of spin them down a bit, it would take that edge off of it, but obviously that would then add a little bit of difference onto the temperatures. There was no fan speed reducer in the box, but if you were using your motherboard, just bear in mind that when your motherboard's saying it's on max, it's still not putting a full 12 volts through the fan. They will spin still ever so slightly slower. What I normally do is have my fans running from a Molex, and if I need to make them run a bit slower, then I just use a fan speed reducer, similar to what Noctua sends you in the box. So all in all, it's a smaller cooler that you have got no problems with RAM. It performs, you know what I mean, so close to the D14, it's unreal. It's a little bit cheaper, and you're not going to have any problems with RAM. Now, I really can't see anything to moan about there. I know technically neither of the coolers this time round passed the 4.4 gig test, but as I said, we let these run and run and run just to be able to show the difference between the two, and as I said, there really isn't a lot in it. So, quite surprisingly enough, because I really didn't expect this to be this good, and I don't mind putting my hands up, it's taken me by surprise, but the Havik definitely deserves the OC3D Gold Award. This is the only single tower cooler to ever pass the 4.4 gigahertz test, or at least, do you know what I mean, do this well in the 4.4 gigahertz test. Yeah, all right, fair enough, it technically should have failed, but like I said, I just left it running to show you. It's got some seriously big balls behind it. It really has. The amount of heat this thing can dissipate, considering it is just a single cooler, is unreal. To the point now where it's the only way I can. It reminds me of the Thermolab Trinity, because that was quite a small cooler, single tower, did really, really well. This is like that on steroids. This is like almost like its performance bigger brother. It does immensely well. So if there's those of you out there that are looking for an air heatsink but have already got tool RAM, this would be my cooler to recommend you. So I think that should probably show you quite how highly I think of this. So yeah, it's really, and I do mean it is really a shame that NZXT were quite so tight about sending me the sample in the first place, because you could have had this gold award months ago, guys. So maybe we should say let that be a lesson to you. But I'll happily give it the gold award. And like I said, if you're up for a single tower cooler, you don't necessarily want the H100, or you haven't got room for it, you know, because you can't mount it, and you've got big RAM, so you can't use the NH-D14, this is the cooler that you need to be buying. So, with that bombshell, this is Tiny Tom Logan with another video for you. Out. Oh, fuck.